Evening, everybody. It's our committee of the whole meeting for September the 13th, and I'll call our meeting to order. It's 7:05. Does anybody have any agenda additions to add, subtract? All right then.
I guess I do.
Okay, what would you like to add, Councillor Hassan?
I want to add the greenhouse.
Okay, 7B, greenhouse. Community greenhouse, is it?
Yeah.
It was the schools or DCFN's greenhouse idea.
Yeah, school greenhouse or
Yeah. Okay.
school community greenhouse.
Okay, so that would be 7B then. And if I can see a show of hands to adopt the amended agenda. Okay, and Deputy Mayor, you also in favor of the amended agenda?
Yes.
Right. Any declarations of interest in any of the items tonight? Okay, Councillor Hassan.
I do declare in the homeless warming center, although I don't see myself that I have any conflict in that and some part of it, but still I could state a word of myself or my company that I had a contract and I'm born with the contract. I was born with the contract up to September 8th. Then after that, some people start attacking myself, attacking my company, attacking even the council, attacking the concerned community members here, and it went to situation that is out of the hand. So that's why I decided to take the issue myself and operate the center myself. But up to September 8th, I was up to that contract. I didn't break the contract with the village as the partner or our partner in this service. And I just want to add something. All our time, myself, I don't know, the mayor and my staff and everyone, the teachers who supported or volunteering that time, we never get paid for that. That's our time. We volunteered. We take all these problems and we dealt with all these issues, and we still keep dealing with them, and we will continue to support the community and support the need of the community in this direction. And if there is anything in the future, I'm really open to negotiate and discuss a new term of how it should be operated and how it should be worked, because I also have my own standards. When we started that, before we got any contribution from the government, we started that, and I have expectations on the service to these people, and I'm still on that. I'm still there, and even if anything happened in the future, I have my standards. So whoever organization, if it's a village or whoever organization decide to operate a center somewhere else, they are more than welcome. I will be operating until they find another facility or another place to operate. After that, I can use my building better way, and if that happened, that we have that agreement with any department, any organization, or the village to reoperate it. It's going to be different terms. I'm still going to volunteer, but these things have to be also very clear. I might have a different way of dealing with things.
Okay. Well, let me just stop you there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the update status report, I'll call that, on the goings on at the center and your relationship, I guess, which was discontinued by yourself. And yeah, that'll be an item for discussion. So
okay, thank you.
We'll take it from there. Councillor absences. There are two, and they did notify us. We don't typically approve the absences, but just to let you know that Councillor Morrow and Councillor Sibiston both gave valid reasons for being unable to attend this evening's meeting, and they did get a hold of me before the meeting started. Delegations, we don't have any this evening, but item number 7, reports and discussion matters. We do have 7A, which is the homeless and warming shelter. So I'll ask Councillor Hassan if he can leave the room.
One moment.
Catching a cold? Huh? You catching a cold?
No, it's my
Allergies?
my gall,
Oh,
my stomach.
Not much on the agenda. You okay? Do you want one? Just
And I'll turn it over to SAO Corrigan to give an update. We did discuss this matter at the last regular council meeting, and we did state then that we would try to get a report from the administration ready for the committee of the whole. And I think there's some numbers, some reporting that can be given at this time. And SAO Corrigan, if you would like to go ahead.
thank you, Your Worship. Apologies for not having the report ready today. I can give council a rundown on some of the numbers because I know the finances have been questioned by various people. So I'd like to give kind of an overview of where we're getting the money from and where the money's going. And then I'll follow that up with a report later this week. I have to be careful about going into too much detail on certain invoices that may have to go in camera if it's to be discussed. Okay, so excuse me. We get two different types of funding for this. We get the overnight emergency shelter contribution, and that's for the running of the shelter. And then we get the shelter enhancement fund, which is for upgrading the actual building itself. And both of these from NUBT Housing Corporation. We've had one allocation of funding for the previous fiscal year, which is the same fiscal year for us, but for the government's previous fiscal year, and that ran from January to the end of April. So from the government, for that period, January to April, we received $27,000 from the shelter.
Enhancement?
Hold on. Shelter enhancement fund. $27,000 for the shelter enhancement funding.
So with the capital upgrades.
Exactly, yeah, upgrading the building. And for the running of the shelter for that period, we received $144,000.
Okay.
And that's the majority of that would be staffing. There's cleaning costs, staffing costs, insurance, phone, internet, and then some admin fees that would go.
We do, as a village, attach an administration cost to overseeing.
That's correct, and it's roughly 10%.
Okay.
And for the shelter enhancement fund, that covered things like washing machine, dryer, fridge, TV, beds, and they're things that the village owns. Like with that funding, we purchased them, and although that's to upgrade the building, things like the things that can be removed that aren't part of the structure will be considered village assets. And then there was renovations and construction and plumbing and electrical work done too. And again, with both types of funding, we actually get an administrative cost as well. So that was January to April, and we received the same programs again for this fiscal year. For the shelter, contribution agreement. This time it's for that was for 4 months. Now for the period of a year, we're receiving $200,000 to run the shelter. We've gotten 100,000 of that already, and with another $100,000 coming at a later date. That not a lot of that has been spent so far. Most of the money has been spent. Has just been the January to April funds.
Now, does that period cover March? March, April. It's April. It starts in April.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the last block of funding, the Housing Corp actually extended that to the end of April, even though their fiscal year finishes normally the end of March. For that program, they extended it to the end of April.
So really, this is starting May. This one, the new one.
This one will be starting May 1st. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we've got $200,000 to run the shelter. Again, the majority of costing is staff. And for the shelter enhancement fund, again, this is for upgrading the building and purchasing capital costs. That would be $40,000 we're getting this year for that. There was also a donation from Rose Construction for fuel to the amount of $7,000, I believe. And the savings for that $7,000 were used to pay for a new furnace, a new hot water tank, and a couple of things like that were damaged in the flood.
Right.
Yeah.
There was quite a bit of renovation work I noticed when it first got opened. There was construction of a office. There was some rewiring, electrical, and bathroom work, plumbing, and things like that. I mean, we know that's not cheap, but we were lucky, I think, in the first 4 months or so, there were actually some volunteers that did some work at the shelter. But even so, do you know how much the wages were? Because I know that would have been a fairly large part of the costs associated.
Amanda, do you know those costs? No.
What I do, if I may.
Yeah.
Rather than flip through the.
I'll be more prepared for next
Yeah,
year.
We'll get the breakdown.
Because I know there was a lot of donations, internal donations for time and work through Unity. So it would be nice to be able to get some numbers or average it out so we know exactly.
Yeah.
Because the concerns that I've been reading are just like numbers. I don't know where the numbers are coming from with the complaints that were raised. So it would be nice to just have a good financial statement. So this is what we received. These are expenditures that were applied to the operations and the, then that way we can say the report's ready, come and pick it up. Because, it's just, and we're not hiding anything.
No.
There's so once we get a good financial report and, and a good summary as to how many volunteers have worked in the shelter since we've opened it, since it's been opened, because we've got to. So.
And, I think too, we have to be clear that Councillor Hassan did not have any involvement in directing the work to himself or making decisions about whether he would get work or not. He was simply asked as a potential building owner or provider what the rent was that he would expect if he were to use his building for a shelter. Now, this ad hoc committee, interagency group that was meeting to try to solve the homelessness. It was some counselors, some band council members, administration. It was health and social service people, housing authority people, church people. It was all kinds of people that were trying to get something together because winter was coming. This group that didn't have any allegiance to really any one particular group was able to identify the one and only available building that was
Available.
logically going to be, able to be used. And it turned out to be Moiz's. So the only thing that Moiz provided was what he would charge for rent. That was written up in a proposal by 3 representatives of that group and put to housing, the homelessness division. The funding was approved based on that proposal. And then they wanted a funding agency to put the money through because this interagency group had no official standing. It was just an ad hoc group of people that had come together, albeit all stakeholders, all very interested, all had, quite an interest in this subject, but they weren't a society, they weren't a corporation, they weren't a political, arm of government or anything. So it turned out that we had to have a group. It was either going to be a not-for-profit, a society, the band, or the village was really, or maybe the Métis. But it had to be that type of group, a registered, legally recognized group that could do it. The First Nation at the time indicated that, they had enough on their plate that this was not something that they could undertake at that time. So, although at first I think the general direction had been to do that, we were told no, we aren't going that route, and that's fine. So we respected that. We looked in other areas for a potential building. Meanwhile, Moise had actually just gone off and started the shelter. Regardless whether he was going to get any funding or rent in the future, he had no way of knowing that, because when he went off and did that, basically a proposal had not even gone in. It hadn't even been submitted. But he just took that action upon himself. That was an interesting thing to do. And so that's kind of how things morphed into the way they did. In the end, the village was the only entity, legally recognized entity, that was willing, reluctantly, as I recall, to step up and act as the flow-through agency, because this is, people generally aren't looking to jump into this. There may be societies that are geared up for this in Yellowknife, like Red Cross or what have you, long-established organizations, volunteer groups. We simply do not have that in Fort Simpson. So it turned out the village stepped up when really I think at that point there were no other choices. And they followed the proposal, which had been developed by the ad hoc interagency group made up of individuals from many other organizations. The village didn't have to put that out to a proposal call or a tender, because the funding had already been obtained and the spending had been identified in the proposal. The government funded it according to a schedule of activity that had been identified. All the village was doing was simply acting as the flow through. This wasn't taxpayers' money from the village of Fort Simpson. It was simply acting as that conduit. And so just to be clear how that all came about. And yes, it'd be nice to get that final report breakdown of the numbers, because I think, the government itself is obviously interested in knowing those numbers, and we provide them. We're an audited organization. We have that administration capability, and that's partly why, the village was able to undertake this. But there's a lot of liability attached to this. It's one of the reasons that the village was able to do it as well. We have sort of a blanket insurance policy that was luckily able to cover this activity. certainly, we can take a look at throwing this whole thing back to the interagency group that originally looked at this to get some feedback as to what they think. I mean, certainly right now, the village has a signed contribution agreement. Does this interagency group, if they look at the financials, they see where we're at, they understand what's going on in the community, do they feel like we should put out a call for proposals? Or, expression of interest to see if anybody else is interested in being the flow-through organization? Or should we, do something else as a community? I don't know, but we can ask. We can throw that open and get some more feedback on that. I think that might be a useful exercise, and working with the band, perhaps we could organize that type of meeting, and then it'll be like a committee almost, giving feedback to the village. I'll wait to see the report though, and so that the committee has as much information as they need, and we'll give them the update as well. Okay, Councillor Bellefontaine.
I was going to say as well that the group of people that did the volunteering, that had all the meetings, that group is the one that decided to have a shelter rather than build tiny homes. I know people have come up with other ideas, but I feel like those ideas would have been more expensive. And like you said, it's not village funds that we're spending. This was money that was raised by a group that did a proposal to get this money. So it was being spent in the way that that group had intended it to be spent. And it wasn't put out to tender because it wasn't intended to be a make-work project to make people money. It was meant to be done at the lowest possible cost to provide a service that we could. That's the way that I looked at it. So seeing all of the comments that people have, I think it's great that they're thinking about it. And I think they should get more involved and participate in some of the meetings. Maybe they could call a meeting, but maybe working together. I mean, that's how we got to this point already. We worked together to get to this point. Before, we didn't even have this. And it was always too big of a project for anybody to take on. But a group of people did get together and made it happen. And I think that's really where we should be focusing, that Fort Simpson saw a need and people generally just came together to do this thing. So I think we could look at it in a more positive way than some people have. And we can always improve on that. And it might be good to, when we have our next public meeting, this could be something that comes up and people could be invited to participate and review what's been done and how we could maybe do it better going forward.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor, any thoughts on this subject?
I like Troy's approach. I completely agree with him. We should just get the reports done, financial and the general results and stats or whatever. And we should have a meeting with the interagency meeting and present it there, and then see where we can go from there.
Okay. So everybody's in general agreement that that's a good move?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll see that happens. Okay, now, if that's it for that, I'll invite Councillor Hassan back in and we'll do item 7B. He knows,
I didn't see him up there.
he might be right outside. I think he's probably just outside the doors. He actually just leaves the building. Welcome back, Councillor Hassan.
Thank you.
So we're on to item 7B, which is the community greenhouse idea. And if you wanted to bring that subject matter up, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, in fact, after the last meeting we had in brought this issue, I talked to the superintendent of education, and the project with DFN, I don't know where it is, and he doesn't even know. So I'm expecting the school or the principal to come back. He might approach the LKFN and the village to have this project going, because they have the funding. They already have the funding, I believe, around 100 and 100 or 140, and there are more funding to come for this project, because it's part of the greenhouse program in Canada. So when I remember when we had the meeting with them, we kind of decided to give them a piece of land where it belonged to the village. So I think we should be prepared now if they come back, what piece of land that could be, this project could be in, or we could use that project for this facility. I think that's from my side, and
But
I believe
we
the
should-
money is ready there.
Yeah. So when do you think they're going to do that? Because we should wait till we get approached, I guess, and then sit down with
We
them.
got approached before. We are part of it. We are
Yeah.
already part of it. So even it's our right to ask where is this project, because we had a meeting with them here, if you remember. We had a meeting that time. The DFN did not get any funding yet from the superintendent from ECE, but right now the funding is there. So we are already part of it.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
SAO.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, I know those discussions about using a certain lot for the greenhouse. If I remember correctly, we were waiting for a proposal from DFN, I believe, and then we would go ahead with making that location official if that were the way council wanted to go. Right now, that location isn't available. So we'd have to look at somewhere else if that's what council wants to do. I don't know if anyone's thought about approaching the community garden and doing something with, on the same lot
Yeah.
as those guys. It kind of fits really. But unless council have any other ideas.
From my side, I can ask the superintendent to come for presentation here at the meeting, and can tell the council where he is at or where they are at, and we can go from there. I just want to bring it to the table so everyone is aware with what's going on, because right now we as a DA also, we are concerned with this project, and it's the end of our term, so we want to know before the end of our term what's happening in this program. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Councillor Hassan. Does anyone else have any comments on that project? Did you want the SAO to touch base with?
That would probably help. Yeah.
The superintendent? or-
Yes, sir.
Okay, maybe we could get it direct from him, and that way, if there's any updates, the council SAO could give it to us, or invite the superintendent himself to come and speak to us. Yeah, it's good to review or to remind ourselves of that project. It was a potentially good one. All right. Well,
Well, I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just the one thing that does concern me is the ongoing maintenance and upkeep on the greenhouse. Who would be responsible for that?
I
I
remember
think
the-
all these questions, if you have a meeting with him, he will definitely give
Okay.
you an answer. But I remember it's even this project is even will give opportunity of employment to some individuals from the community. So it's a good program, and I know that it's not only once. It's not only one funding for 1 year, it would be an ongoing funding from the federal government.
Okay. All right, so if there's no more comments on that, and we have no in camera, then we'll adjourn our meeting. I'll call the meeting over at 7:35 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you. Good night.